Years ago, my mom and my cousin set out on a late-night drive back home from Aunt Sarah's place, a 2-hour journey that traversed desert landscapes and winding mountain roads. There was a shortcut, a dubious strip of highway through the middle of nowhere, devoid of civilization for miles. It promised to trim down the drive by a mere 10 minutes, but that was enough for them to take the chance. It was around 11 p.m., and the desert night stretched out before them like a vast, dark canvas. The two-lane road stretched endlessly, flanked by nothing but the quiet of the wilderness. No houses, shops, lights, or even those emergency phone booths. Just the hum of the engine and the distant whispers of the night. As they cruised down the desolate stretch, my cousin spotted something on the road. Initially dismissing it as a rock, reaching closer, she slowed down. Closer inspection revealed a figure, a lady with long, ebony hair and a burlap shawl wrapped around her. Concerned, they pulled up beside her and asked if she needed help. The lady, crouched with her back to them, suddenly stood up and turned around. A shriek, piercing and haunting, echoed through the night. My cousin swore her eyes were pitch black and her skin, almost translucent, gave her an otherworldly appearance. Panic set in as my cousin floored the accelerator, leaving behind the bizarre encounter. The mysterious woman gave chase briefly, but they soon lost sight of her in the darkness. They didn't stop for anything, running stop signs and pushing the accelerator until they reached the next town. Gas station lights flickered in the distance, offering a welcome refuge for frayed nerves. Once parked, they took a moment to process the surreal encounter. My cousin, still trembling, recounted the tale to her coworkers weeks later. It was then that the mention of a skinwalker entered the narrative, a term that sent shivers down their spines. The idea that they might have narrowly escaped a supernatural entity intensified the unease. Fast forward to the present day, and the mere mention of that shortcut sends shivers down my cousin's spine. She refuses to traverse it, even when someone else is at the wheel. The main highway, no matter how long, has become her preferred route, a tangible barrier against the unknown. Back in my younger days, bravery was a companion that walked beside me, or perhaps it was the cloak of invincibility that youth often drapes us in. I had weathered storms, a relentless stalker haunting my sister and me for over a year, a harrowing encounter with assault, 2 house fires, and the unsettling backdrop of a seemingly haunted childhood home. Not the playful ghosts of Disney tales, mind you, but a place with a basement that felt like a torture chamber and strange occurrences that defied explanation. At the tender age of 17, a driver's license eluded me. In fact, I didn't acquire one until I turned 36. I relied on my own 2 feet for most journeys, occasionally catching rides with friends or resorting to the infrequent act of hitchhiking. On this particular night, exhaustion weighed heavy on me after a late shift, and the prospect of walking seemed daunting. So I found myself thumbing a ride, a rare occurrence shaped by weariness. My hitchhiking rulebook typically dictated that I wouldn't accept rides from solitary men. Safety in numbers, or at least the presence of a wife, girlfriend, or kids in the car, was my preferred norm. However, the night unfolded differently. Cars were scarce, the cold seeping through my tired bones. When he pulled over, I took a moment to size him up, convinced I could handle the situation if need be. A slender figure with an odd frailness about him, despite his outward appearance of health. We agreed on a destination, exchanged names, and I sought refuge in the warmth of the heating vent. Small talk ensued, a delicate dance of questions about my locality and how I found living there. He mentioned being in the area for only a couple of months, finding it beautiful and hoping he could find happiness there. A comment that lingered oddly in the air, but fatigue led me to dismiss it without much thought. As snowflakes began their descent, the road turned treacherous. The driver, silent until then, focused on navigating the slippery path. A cautious silence enveloped the car, a comfort in the absence of forced conversation. Yet, a sudden incident at an intersection shattered the tranquility. A nearby car slid, and without thinking, I blurted out a warning. His reaction was swift. An abrupt acceleration through the intersection followed by an outburst that jolted me. "Don't ever scream at me." The shock of his response left me speechless. I suggested stopping at the nearest point, declaring it close enough for me to walk. Unresponsive, he continued driving, his speed increasing. Fear nestled within me, a realization that the situation had taken a turn into the unknown. I debated whether to stay silent or speak, but after another mile, he began to mumble to himself. His words, rapid and hushed, carried a surreal quality. "You're always yelling at me. I've told you time and again I do not appreciate being yelled at. But do you listen? Nuo. Well, I'm done listening to you now. Do you hear that?" Confusion and fear gripped me. I didn't know how to respond or if responding was the right course of action. Tears welled up as I considered drastic options, like grabbing the wheel to steer the car into the unknown. But an unsettling realization dawned upon me: the door lock was missing. A silver-lined hole replaced the usual mechanism. Panic and despair flooded my thoughts, leaving me at a loss. His eyes met mine for the first time since I had entered the car. A rapid blinking preceded a sudden slowing, and he pulled into a gas station. Waiting anxiously, I hoped for the click of unlocked doors without uttering a word. After what felt like an eternity, he calmly stated, "I think I'd better let you out here," and pressed the button to release the locks. I wasted no time, leaping out of the car as if escaping a raging fire. In the late afternoon, the vast desolation of the high desert stretched before me as I embarked on a shortcut from 29 Palms, Ka, to Albuquerque NM. The road, a lonely 2-lane stretch, cut through nothingness, interrupted only by the nearly abandoned town of Amboy. Nestled in a desolate landscape, Amboy harbored a dormant volcano, a lava field on one side, and a salt flat on the other. Rumors whispered of its eerie association with satanic group activities, adding an unsettling layer to the isolated journey. Alone in my car, I stopped briefly in Amboy to snap a photo of the city sign proof for friends who dared me to take this remote route to I-40. Resuming my drive, I navigated through the mountain range between Amboy and the interstate. Ascending the mountain pass, I found myself driving through a canyon flanked by tall grass on either side. In the distance, a peculiar sight unfolded, objects obstructing the road ahead. As I approached cautiously, the scene revealed a red Pontiac Fiero positioned sideways, blocking both lanes. A suitcase lay open, its contents scattered across the asphalt, and 2 lifeless bodies lay face down on the road. A man and a woman. A palpable unease settled over me, prompting a surge of caution. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, too perfect, as if meticulously staged. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end, and instinct kicked in. A Marine's training surfaced as I reached under the seat, retrieving a 9mm pistol and chambering a round. Paranoia gnawed at my thoughts. An ambush, perhaps? The scenario felt surreal, a moment straight out of a horror movie. Surveying the surroundings, I observed a potential escape route. A path through the grass, passing the man on the left, swerving to the right of the woman, and maneuvering behind the Fiero. The plan took shape in my mind, a calculated line to navigate this eerie obstacle course. Still, the thought of stepping out of the car lingered like a scene from a nightmare. With the adrenaline coursing through my veins, I dropped the car into first gear and executed the plan. Careening past the Fiero, avoiding both bodies, I accelerated, putting distance between myself and the unsettling scene. As the road unfolded ahead, I slowed down, allowing myself a moment to breathe, my heart pounding in my chest. Glancing into the rearview mirror, I was shocked to the core. The 2 bodies, seemingly lifeless moments ago, were now on their knees. Simultaneously, a surreal horde emerged from the tall grass flanking the road. Around 20 people, appearing out of nowhere. Fear surged, and without a second thought, my foot slammed the gas pedal to the floor. The landscape blurred as I raced toward the I-40 East on-ramp, leaving the mysterious congregation behind. The chilling uncertainty of what might have awaited me had I chosen a different plan lingered, a haunting reminder that reality can be more terrifying than any movie. In the late 70s, my uncle was knee-deep in his medical studies at the University of Chicago. After a particularly draining morning class, he decided to dodge the taxi fare and hitchhike back home to Lincoln Park on the north side. It was a different time, and hitchhiking wasn't as frowned upon as it is today. A Plymouth Satellite pulled up, and its driver seemed like an ordinary, friendly guy. Light-hearted even, my uncle later recalled. Without much thought, he hopped into the car, and they began the journey towards Lake Shore Drive. The wind whistled through the windows as the cityscape morphed into a blur. However, the script took a terrifying turn when, upon reaching Lake Shore Drive, the man unexpectedly veered south instead of heading towards Lincoln Park. Confused, my uncle pointed out the mistake, urging the driver to turn around and head north. A seemingly benign request turned ominous as the man glanced at my uncle, placed a hand on his knee, and uttered those chilling words, "No, son, you are coming with me." The smile that accompanied the statement was anything but friendly. It was dark, haunting, and sent shivers down my uncle's spine. Panic gripped my uncle, paralyzing him momentarily. The car pressed on, heading towards the unknown. Traffic near the South Shore provided a brief respite, and seizing the opportunity, my uncle summoned every ounce of courage, swiftly unlocking the passenger door, and without a backward glance, he ran. Ran away from the chilling encounter that had unfolded within the confines of that Plymouth satellite. Fast forward a year or two, a cold December day enveloped the city. My uncle, seeking solace in a cozy cafe, was sipping coffee with my future aunt. The news was on, and a special news report started, which sent a shiver down his spine. There on the screen was the man who had offered him a ride that fateful day. John Wayne Gacy. The blood in my uncle's veins turned cold as the details unraveled. Gacy was suspected of killing over 20 young men and boys. The connection between the man who veered off course and the heinous crimes being recounted on the TV was an eerie revelation. Gacy, a predator in plain sight, had removed the passenger side door handle to ensure his victims couldn't escape. The echoes of that fateful day reverberated in my uncle's mind, a survivor's tale that had narrowly avoided becoming another tragic chapter in Gacy's horrifying spree. Driving along the stretch of I-80 between San Francisco and Cheyenne, Wyoming was something I did quite often. It's a marathon of a journey, spanning 16 to 20 hours, depending on the whims of weather and traffic. On one particular night, the monotony of the road was shattered by an odd grinding noise emanating from my car. It was around 2 a.m., the world outside bathed in an eerie silence. Pulling into a well-lit rest stop, I roused my buddy from his slumber, explaining the unsettling noise that had disrupted the solitude of the night. As we stepped out of the car, a haunting sound reached our ears. The unmistakable cry of a child. The rest stop, though devoid of other cars, was not unfamiliar to the stories circulating about child trafficking and kidnappings in the vicinity. Concerned, we decided to investigate, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. Following the source of the sound, we found ourselves standing outside the women's bathroom. The low, mournful sobbing persisted, sending shivers down our spines. Bracing ourselves for the worst, we entered the bathroom, ready to confront a nightmarish scene. To our bewilderment, the room was empty. The cries continued, yet there was no visible sign of distress. We combed through each stall, scrutinized the trash can, and searched every nook and cranny, but the source of the sound eluded us. Was it a hidden speaker playing tricks on our senses? Were we unwitting participants in a bizarre prank? The mystery deepened, leaving us on edge. A decision was made to investigate further. My buddy, displaying a mix of curiosity and caution, climbed up one of the stalls to reach the top window of the rest stop. The window, vented out and open, seemed like an unlikely source of the haunting cries. Closing it, the sobbing ceased abruptly. Puzzled, we stared at each other, trying to make sense of the inexplicable. Suddenly, the window slammed shut again on its own, without any provocation from my buddy. The echo of the noise returned, low and mournful. Fear gripped us, the inexplicable events unfolding in front of our eyes, sending a chill down our spines. We were no longer dealing with a mere oddity. Something otherworldly seemed to be at play. In a matter of seconds, we fled the eerie confines of the bathroom, the cries following us. Racing back to the car, we accelerated out of the parking lot, leaving the mysterious rest stop behind. The unsettling noise persisted, a haunting reminder of an encounter with the unknown. The road snaked through the heart of Texas, a long and desolate stretch that I'd traversed many times. Dad always warned me about one part of it, claiming it cut through ancient Native American land, teeming with stories of spirits and shadows. Despite his warnings, curiosity sometimes got the better of me, and one night I found myself navigating that eerie road, towing my trailer behind. The darkness seemed to envelop everything, and the only source of light was the narrow beam from my headlights cutting through the inky night. Shadows played tricks on my tired eyes, dancing along the periphery of my vision. It was a familiar sensation, but this night felt different. Out of nowhere, a loud bang echoed through the silent night. It was as if someone had forcefully slapped the side of my trailer. My heart leaped into my throat, and I pulled over to the side of the road. Stepping out into the chilling night, gravel crunched beneath my boots as I examined the tires, expecting to find a blown one. As I rounded the corner of the trailer, the air grew thick with tension. A feeling of unease settled in the pit of my stomach, and I couldn't shake the sense that I was being watched. Then a low, chilling laugh pierced the silence. It sent shivers down my spine, and my eyes strained to make sense of the shadows dancing in the moonlight. A figure, swift and elusive, took off running down the road. Fear gripped me as I hurried back to my truck. The laughter still echoed in my ears as I peeled out of there, my foot heavy on the accelerator. The miles flew by, but the tension lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone on that desolate road. Was it a prankster, or was something far more sinister at play? 15 miles later, I saw it. A skinwalker, standing on the side of the road. Its eyes glowed in the dim light, and its form seemed to shift and change. Arms crossed, it stared at me with an otherworldly gaze. Panic surged through me as I slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching against the asphalt. The skinwalker remained motionless, its presence haunting. What did it want? Why was it tormenting me on this forsaken road? I fumbled for the gear shift, my hands trembling, and sped away, leaving the supernatural being behind. As the sun bathed the landscape in warm light, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The road stretched out ahead, seemingly endless, and the memories of that night clung to me like a shadow. I pushed the pedal harder, desperate to put distance between myself and the entities that haunted that cursed road. Once upon a time, back in the late 80s, in the far north of Scandinavia, there was a story that unfolded in a place covered with lots of thick pine trees. Picture this. A highway running between cities, sometimes passing by small villages and lonely houses, but there were parts where it felt like the road just went on and on with nothing but pine trees as far as you could see. In one of those small communities along the highway lived a young girl in her early 20s. She had recently been on a trip down south, maybe visiting friends or relatives. This all happened as winter was creeping in, making the nights freezing cold. So there she was, on a motor coach heading home. The bus journey took her through those seemingly endless stretches of pine trees. Tired from the journey, she dozed off during the ride, missing the stop that led to her cozy community. As she woke up, she checked her watch and realized they'd passed her stop not too long ago. Now faced with a tough choice, get off and walk back for about 3 hours or continue to the next city where she knew no one and had no place to stay. Feeling stuck, she explained her situation to the bus driver, a kind person. Understanding her dilemma, he pulled off at the next parking space and let her get off. She walked in the direction of her town in the darkness. Unfortunately, that was the last time anyone saw her. Almost 15 years later, a hiker exploring the thick, almost impassable forest stumbled upon a shocking discovery. A lifeless body, tied to a tree, well over an hour's walk from the road. The town was shaken by this news. What was even more puzzling was that the autopsy showed no signs of physical violence. Someone had left her there, alive. A couple of years back, me and my best buddy embarked on an epic road trip to the States for a music festival. We had a blast, met up with friends, and saw a bunch of cool stuff. To make things even more interesting, one of our buddies decided to tag along back home. He needed to get back for school, and his pals weren't ready to head home just yet. So we made the crazy decision to drive straight home, taking turns behind the wheel, and it took us a whopping 24 hours for the full trip. It was a time when GPS wasn't as savvy as it is now. I found myself on the night shift around 2 a.m., cruising down a back road in the middle of nowhere. The night was beautiful. A clear sky, a full moon shining bright, giving us that perfect summer party vibe. But here's where things start to get strange. We followed the GPS onto this back road, driving into a massive valley. Open fields surrounded us, not a single house or car in sight. To add to the weirdness, we lost all our connections. No satellite signal, no GPS, no cell service. But being the cool beans road trippers we were, we didn't worry too much. I knew we just had to follow this road for a couple more hours. About 20 minutes into this valley adventure, we spotted a bridge up ahead. As we got closer, I noticed a car pulled to the side of the road. Now, that's not uncommon, right? People often sleep in pullouts during road trips. But this car had all its windows blacked out. Weird, right? With the moonlight, we should have been able to peek inside at least a bit. But nope, it was pitch black. And to top it off, no license plate in sight. Seemed like an abandoned ride in the middle of nowhere. Now, you might think, okay, abandoned car, whatever. But as soon as we passed it, the car's lights flicked on, and it started cruising right behind us. The car started tailgating us, and we couldn't see a thing inside. Windows all blacked out. At first, we brushed it off. Maybe the driver was lost, following us to find a way out of this backroad labyrinth. But then, that uneasy feeling started creeping in. I'm not one to get scared easily, mind you, but this feeling was different. It was like a get the heck away from this car right now vibe. I pushed it aside, thinking it was probably just some explainable situation. Until we saw something in the middle of the road. Almost like it was scripted, the car backed off, and we strained our eyes to figure out what was up ahead. As we got closer, there it was. Something that looked like a body lying in the middle of the lanes. Panic mode engaged. I wasn't stopping for anyone in this desolate area. No other cars, no houses, and no lights as far as you could see. I told my buddies, hold on, we're going through. As we got even closer, we saw it. A scarecrow in the middle of the road. A creepy scarecrow. The car, small enough to go around it, continued following us. I sped up, it sped up. I slowed down, it slowed down. It was like some bizarre dance until I hit the gas, and after a couple of minutes, the car did a U-turn and drove back. One of my buddies turns to me and says, I swear I saw spikes in that thing. Lucky for us, we were driving a huge truck, and the scarecrow's wheel span was smaller than our truck's. We never even touched it. It took another half hour before we reached an area with cell service and the GPS picked back up. It wasn't until we got home at 5 a.m. that we remembered something important. During that time, there were a couple of missing people reported in our province. Folks who were on vacation, driving home from the States, and never made it back or were ever found. We got pretty freaked out, thinking we might have dodged some crazy horror movie situation. We contacted the police, filed a report, but sadly, we couldn't pinpoint the exact location. The police couldn't do much other than file the report, but we didn't want this eerie experience to happen to anyone else. It was seriously creepy, and who knows what could have gone down if we didn't drive that big truck through without stopping.